All right, hi everyone. So the earlier panels, we talked a lot about sort of like the artist perspective and more the practice of AI and generative arts. Today, this panel is going to focus on collecting, the patrons, the flippers, and we're going to talk about maybe some of our own practices and how we got into the space. So first, I had people come up to me and be like, can you tell me a bit about yourself? So I realized I didn't do a round of introductions to introduce myself. So hi, I'm Alexandra Art. My background is in facilitating art and technology projects for the last 6 years. So I worked for .art, the top-level domain. Then I launched Electric Artifact Studio. So we were curating shows online since 2020. I minted my first NFT also in 2020. And then in March of last year, when sort of like we were having a generative art exhibition on Electric Artifacts, that's when Hic et Nunc launched. And many of our artists were really concerned about especially the conversation happening around the environment and NFTs. And so Hic et Nunc and Tezos was the natural way for them to onboard into the space. So our first collection we released was Mike Taika's Portraits of Imaginary People, which sold out on the first day, and it was like a really shocking experience considering back then like some of the things on Hic et Nunc you couldn't even like see the artist's profile before. So this is how I came into the space. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with collecting art. I didn't realize you can sell it until later on, and I'll pass on the word for everyone else to sort of introduce themselves before we jump into the questions. So let's just go in a row. Lonely, Ivan, do you want to go first?
Hi, my name is Ivan. I go on Twitter by Lonliboy. I started collecting NFTs pretty much in March 2021 on the 21st on Hic et Nunc. Previously, I didn't really ever collect art. I never had the ability to do so. So that's kind of when I jumped in. And I've been here for about 1.5 years now, collecting every single day and collecting for others as well. So it's been quite a journey so far in NFTs.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ed from krpdm. Started collecting out probably not quite as early as Ivan did, but probably around July, maybe June last year on Hic et Nunc. Collecting lots and lots of bits and bobs here and there, and kind of spun into a DAO with some other people we know. But I've got a background where I've worked in providing technology solutions for various galleries in the past. So kind of seemed like a natural evolution for me personally, collecting digital artworks and NFTs. And I've been doing it ever since, personally and for krpdm.
Hi, I'm Josh. Firstly, thank you, Nicole, verticalcrypto, Tezos Foundation. This event has been an amalgamation of my favorite people, and like finally getting to meet some of them and just getting to appreciate art is something really special. My name's Josh. I go by ballislife.tezeth on Twitter. I describe myself as a collector. I'm not as much of an OG as these guys, but I mainly focus on generative art. I describe myself as a rabbit hole researcher, so if I find something of interest, I'll just delve deeper and yeah.
Hey, I'm Hollywood. I'm head of artist relationships at Rarible. Hey. And I have definitely got imposter syndrome sitting up here, despite the fact that my largest collection is on Tezos. I'm like a massive Tezos maxi, the worst flipper ever. Do not know how to trade at all. Kind of jumped into NFTs very similar time, early March. Don't actually know the date of my first piece I minted, but it was on Hic et Nunc. Completely obsessed from that point on. Like spent a lot of time in Clubhouse. house, doing all the object-to-object weekends, and I think I absolutely love what Tezos is and stands for in the community. But the way that the kind of collector community has built over the last year has just been absolutely unbelievable. So we actually have only had Tezos on Rarible since like November, and it was kind of a slow start and a slow build because it wasn't fully integrated. It is now, but yes, I'm actually just like fangirling because I really want to like learn more about what you guys are doing, what you're picking up and collecting, because I definitely am one of those people that follows from Trex wallets.
Okay, great. And we are going to talk about these practices as well, like tracking wallets and some other things. I wanted to form this conversation in sort of like a timeline. So talking about the early days and then like the summer and then like FX hash and moving forward. And I would love to ask sort of like, so just first in the audience, who has collected on Hic et Nunc? Who remembers the days? Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. No pressure for us to talk about it. So I remember my first experience was at the point where you couldn't see the artist handle, you couldn't see like, you couldn't sell. It was just like, how do I get Tez to get this? Because I just want to have it. And I would love to hear for everyone, like sort of what was your aha moment or what excited you the most? Maybe like the first artist you collected or some of like the highlights and memories you have. Generally your first experience on Tezos.
Yes, that's incredibly relatable. I joined Hic et Nunc pretty much during Object for Object, which was an event where artists were releasing artworks basically for other artists for free, and everyone could get an edition, and it was from a time of 100 editions to 1,000 editions, and it kind of it got me so involved because before a lot of the focus was, when I heard and read about NFTs, was very monetary. So to join an event like that where the art was being so freely shared with everyone, it really strikes something within me. It struck a chord that I don't think I could have necessarily found at that time anywhere else. That's pretty much when I joined. I started finding art by looking at Quasimondo's collection and looking at all the artists that he was collecting. And from that, I found Patrick Trichet, and I found, I found generative art, which I had never seen before, and I had found AI and GAN art. So joining during that time period was pretty much like a history lesson in art, and for old art forms that were made a long time ago to new ones that are emerging now. It was an incredible time to jump in around then.
Yeah, similar to Ivan, it's just as on a personal level, as I was saying, I collected back around summer last year, and picking up W. Blut and Frederick Van Out, and other works, we kind of, the DAO and the collectors that are in the DAO, we started actually fighting over lower edition works and going, which one of you has this? And I really like this. And so we kind of, that was kind of the formation of our DAO in the early days. I think our first mint was August as a DAO. But yeah, it was Hic et Nunc, it was the actual system, it was very less is more, and you kind of had to really dig deep to find the actual artwork, and you had to follow other wallets and follow other artists, and that was actually amazing to do, like to go through other artists' collections and see what they're collecting. I think that's kind of, it strikes at the soul of the ecosystem to see what an artist that you really like is collecting. So that was one of the processes we took on from an early stage. But yeah, the early days were just absolute carnage. I absolutely loved it. As on a personal level and as a DAO, just going after some of the very early stuff back then. Yeah, it's just fascinating. And looking back on it now, it's because we got some of those items in our collection. It's good to look back on what is, the origin story of such a profound movement. Yeah, it's been great for me as on a personal level, and us as a DAO to be able to have that body of collections and artists' work to look back on and enjoy.
Yeah, Josh, what's your story? Like, how did you end up discovering the space?
Well, first time I heard about Tezos was, I was in those clubhouse rooms, and I've spent a good amount of time on Spaces, and I completely dismissed it because I only heard the environmental argument, and for me that wasn't like the sole reason I go and collect something. But eventually, I think it was actually like a Kevin Rose podcast with Chris Wallace where he talked about collecting on Tezos and like the just incredible, like Kevin Rose has been big in just really elevating and putting generative art at the forefront. And so eventually I got to Tezos at like the fall of last year, which was like very late. But then to your guys' points, in my opinion, I'm able to like follow and track wallets. I think that like artists themselves are the best curators often, because they can see like what it will be the trend or what is like actually good art before the masses do. So like once you collect, or once you see like an artist like Nicholas Sassoon or Pixelful, you see like what their tastes are like, what they think is interesting. You like go down those rabbit holes, and then so on and so forth. And then there's like beyond that, there's like collectors like Trill who's on Ethereum, who doesn't like publicly show like his Tezos collection, but like has the most ridiculous generative art collection. And like understanding like that those people recognize that this is good and this is relevant has been like very informative for myself, at least, to learn from. Yeah.
My kind of like journey to Tezos, I guess I was just following the artists. I kind of wasn't really listening to what anyone else was doing. I was just seeing that artists were using this as a tool, you know. And for me, I loved the way that it was almost like you were seeing almost like a lot of work in progress, or they were using it more like a sketchbook. And so coming from like a contemporary art background, like one of my favorite things was always doing studio visits. And I didn't really want to see the work that was hanging on the walls. I wanted to see what was in the plan chest, what was in the drawers. Those were like the magic moments where an artist doesn't necessarily like think about what they're creating. It's kind of like if they're prolific, and you know, the tool of the NFT just means if you're a prolific artist and if you're creating in that way, you're able to kind of like have an output which can be kind of like registered in some way, like whether you register that by someone collecting it or even just like the comments and the feedback. You know, people don't necessarily have to buy. That's the whole thing, right? Is that if you're not in a position to buy, you can still do so much for an artist by sharing and, you know, talking about their work. So that kind of like community, like critical thinking around creation, I thought was super interesting. But yeah, it's amazing. I love hearing like you guys saying you came to it really late. Like, I mean, I was like, I didn't pick up any like John Carroll pieces. I still like, he was one of the artists that I was like obsessed with having as part of our like launch of Tezos on Wearable. Still didn't pick it up. I'm literally the worst collector.
Oh yeah, I think one of the questions we will definitely talk about is our biggest mistake.
Also, really quickly, just like on like traditionally collectors and curators, they've done like site visits to artists, and that's like incredibly valuable, and like that in a way can almost happen at a more rapid pace. Like I was fortunate enough to meet Marcelo and Iskra in Spain, and like their home could literally be in an interior design magazine. Like it's like the most picturesque thing, and like I don't know, just this whole ecosystem has allowed for that to flourish in ways that like have not ever really occurred before, which is beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful, the connection you have with the artist beyond just, and it's also because it's all very contemporary art. Like if you collect traditional art, the artist's probably passed away, or there's a barrier with the gallery, but there's a direct relationship that you have where you can learn much more and actually experience the process behind it. I sort of like wanted to ask a question in terms of like, we talked about following wallets, right? Like how do you discover talent? How do you discover the next gem? Like I remember from my personal experience, I would follow Art Gnome, but I would read his his basically online I don't know, was it online journal, where he interviewed Manolo really early on, like Manoloid, and I was like, oh damn, I wish this artist was minting something. And then I found out that he started minting on Hicket Nunk, but he had an anonymous wallet, and it was just there, and like once every couple of days something would come up, and it was unminted. It was just like tons of pieces lying there. And speaking of our mistakes, I was like, okay, I'll buy one of this and leave the rest for others to have some more, you know, like being really polite, like respect. They were like $5, right? Like, so I'm like, okay, so I had one of each, but like when people started picking up, obviously like when he started releasing one-on-ones or 8 out of 8s, it was just like swiped and like you had 0 chance. And I think like this sort of like process of discovering and learning what being a collector actually is to you personally is also really important, because for some people it is about making money, it is about flipping, and is flipping even bad? So I would love to hear like your experience, you know, finding the balance between like what's the right way to go about it, like how much do you sell or how much do you keep, like how do you manage your collection?
Right, so I think at this point I have something about 2,500 NFTs spanning across a year and a half, and a very, very small portion of them I've ever sold. Kind of the only reason I ever have decided to sell art was to continue growing this collection, because I've really became quite obsessed with NFTs and talking with artists and learning about the process and the emotional weight of what it all really means to be a human and to be affected by art. So yeah, I would say one of my biggest mistakes is probably not buying as many Manoloids as I had. And I do remember when they were out for a Tez to 5 Tezos, and at that time it was maybe $8 or $10. But even then, I'm pretty sure I had initially found out about him because Iskra had made a tweet about Manoloid or had collected a piece, and I was going through their collection, and then I was like, whoa, who is this? This is really interesting art. And then I read the Art Gnome article. Yeah, there's a lot of history to it. But as far as flipping goes, it's not something that I actively think to do as a collector. It's pretty much when I'm running low on Tezos, I have to start thinking about what pieces could I sell to the moment where I could keep collecting for a much longer period of time. And I think that is a big advantage of having joined almost 2 years ago from a collecting perspective. There's just a lot of pieces now, and a lot of them have accrued so much value because the artists have continued talking and being passionate about the art and pushing it forward as on Tezos. And yeah, that's what I think about them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I echo your sentiments fully. I think, in general, with flipping, is a tale of we have the DAO of krpdm, and we don't generally flip. We're just collecting. We think we're in such an early stage of an ecosystem whereby we're well capitalized. We don't really need to worry about flipping, and I appreciate that's a luxury that's not afforded to a lot of individual collectors, including myself. Actually, there've certainly been times that I've had to sell something or flip it. And there's a very, very small corner, I think, of the community that maybe frowns upon that. Maybe there's a very mild animosity, which I think is a little unfounded. You know, we've got Tezos as a blockchain that you can bake in your royalties as an artist, and you know, as humans, as people, we're always evolving. We're never the finished article, and that's reflected in how we collect. You know, our tastes are always being refined, and we're going, well, maybe that doesn't fit in quite with this collection. So it's, you know, it gets this term flipping, and it's up there above somewhere. But honestly, like it's kind of self-curation. Letting go of a work can be hard. Sometimes it's an easier decision. Sometimes you might have seen a big collection mint out, a large long-form collection. You go, you know what, as a collection, not quite hitting it for me. So you might just decide to maybe part ways with a few there. So yeah, I personally, I think flipping's a really important part of the ecosystem. KRPdm wouldn't have some of the what we consider grails if it weren't for flippers. So yeah, have at it. We love it. I think it's a massively important part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, like Lonely's Flip Me SVG3 by Andreas Geisen, who's here, and like one of my favorite generative artists, and I've flipped per se RGBs to krpdm. Like we're all like, if you also think about it, like you're talking about Jason earlier, and I also copied Jason. Like if Jason didn't tweet about Loom by Andreas Rau, and if I didn't see like a retweet by like Itzel Yard, I wouldn't have been put onto it. And then like you think about it, I paid 2 Tezos to mint a Loom on FX Hash like back in the day. That was like $10. I've sold a Loom for like 700 Tezos. Like there's a 20% royalty on that Loom. So if I didn't make that sale, Andreas Rau would not have received 20% of 700 Tezos, and you can quickly do the math. Like, flippers are also like financially supporting the artist as well, like immediately. That doesn't happen in the traditional world. So it's a necessary part of the ecosystem. It's like creating market equilibrium. I think the issue with like the perception around flippers is like when flippers extract more value than they maybe put into the ecosystem. I mean, that's not uncommon in the traditional art world. There are people that just simply flip because they can understand and perceive value quicker than other people, but like it's like natural. Yeah.
It's really funny because I actually think the community in Tezos is really very different to a lot of the other chains, for instance. Like when I think of flippers, I almost think about people like flipping things within the first 48 hours. In my mind, that's a flipper. And so when I'm thinking about collectors selling on work, or I think that there's different sort of intentions, or to me, I feel like there's different intentions in the Tezos community. And one of the things I love about kind of like work being sold on or released, like you say, is that it does have this opportunity to, you know, move to its next home. There is kind of like a sense of, this shared ownership, this more custodial kind of like sentiment around collecting art. And I think that sort of transitioning actually, I find that super, super interesting, and I think for artists it's very interesting to see where their work kind of goes, and you know, obviously that's one of the joys of the blockchain, is that traceability aspect.
Yeah, I think it was either Funny Guys or someone, we were talking about it, and on FX Hash there's this sort of, when you mint, you don't know what you're minting. And the funny part is some flippers actually, like as you mentioned, the first, I would say 1 hour, they actually sell at a loss. I don't know what's the logic there. Many people like DM me after I buy something. They're like, hey, do you want to buy this FX Dragon for 170 Tez? I'm like, dude, just hold on to it. Like, it's going to go up, you know? But the beauty of it, though, is that you can actually pick a work you like, because sometimes you mint something that's like not necessarily, you know, your aesthetic or whatever. So there's the good and the bad. But I do see certain names, which I'm not going to call out, that like literally the second the collection drops for 2 Tezos, 3 Tezos, it's up on the market. Like, okay, let's go. So I don't think those people know the royalty difference, but you know, whatever floats your boat. So I just wanted to like also talk about some of the things that we love in this space. So I see Robness hiding in the corner, but actually I'm going to call him out because there was this certain performance that he did in the early days of Hicket Nunk, which was under the Zorro. And basically he said that he dropped a work on Tezos for the first time under an anonymous wallet, and we had to go and find it. And like obviously like the first thing I did was like, okay, I quickly have to like scroll through my home feed, but there were like 20 works a minute being minted, so you really had to be 100% certain it's the work. And I remember seeing it, but it was 50 Tezos, and I'm like, oh, I'm too scared to pay this. And then someone bought it and he posted about it, and I'm like, yes, that was it. But he still didn't say if it was the right one. But then we started like sort of like all us going on the quest and collecting it and discovering it. So I think like some of these like personal experiences that people do is what makes the community special for me. And I would love to hear like what makes the whole ecosystem special for you.
That's another event that I very much enjoyed.
You were hunting for that
yes,
too.
Yes, I was hunting for it, and I remember everyone in chats were saying, "Well, is this Rob Ness, or is this Rob Ness's art?" And we eventually found it, and it was a pure joy. That kind of performance on the blockchain and on social media, where everyone comes together and tries to find art in that kind of way, is such an immersive experience. And it really was a testament to how experimental, I would say, Hic Nunc was. One of the, there were other events that I think happened, such as like John Carroll tributes, where hundreds, possibly thousands of artists made tributes to his windows, which are a very focal motif that he has had throughout since like 2014, 2015. And it was just a pure joy to see everyone, seeing someone's art and feeling something from it and creating other art with that motif inside of it by the thousands. There are object events that happened after the first one, like maybe 3 or 4 times. There was a photography event also, where photographers released a lot of pieces for like 1 Tezos at 100 editions, and that ushered in so many photographers into Hic Nunc and into Object. Yeah, there's just been so many events where it kind of has brought together everyone through all sorts of genres of art. Yeah.
Can I just ask, like, how many people, raise your hand if you know John Carroll's windows? Okay, has anyone made a tribute to a John Carroll window? We see 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, great. It was basically artists remixing the original window in their own style and selling it, and then John Carroll, the artist, actually made a museum exhibiting like all of the windows that he collected. It was a really funny experience. Ed, do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, my main point was going to be the community, and that's indicative of what we've been discussing. The sort of community that surrounds Tezos is, something to behold. It's been amazing as a collector. You could reach out to an artist that's pumping out some really special works, and they're invariably really humble people that are just really easy to talk to, and you can talk about their processes. And as collectors, that's amazing, being able to not have this divide between, listen, we're gonna collect your work and we won't bother you though. And you can actually have a really good chat with these creators, and that's kind of, it speaks volumes about Tezos, the ecosystem. And then another point for us is, more recently we were a bit late to the party with FX Hash, but I think that's one of the things we found massively special about the Tezos ecosystem. I think it was, I spent a lot of time on art blocks and seeing drops on there, and some of them are absolutely fabulous, but having this open-ended, just do whatever, and you can see artists experimenting and getting to terms with what sort of edition size they could work with and narrowing down their color palettes, and you're getting a look in or an insight into the workshop in some format on these sorts of tools like FX Hash, and also on other tools in the ecosystem. So I think in general it's the case that the community is one. We have collectors and we have artists, but it doesn't seem like there's this massive divide. It's really refreshing to be able to reach out and converse with artists and talk about their processes. And then sometimes what's amazing is you buy a fantastic artwork or a one of one, and then the artist will go, "Thank you so much, I also sent you this as a gift," and like just a freebie, and these are amazing works of art. It's happening every day. We'll collect a really beautiful piece of work, and then it's just like, here's a thanks for collecting. And these are straight into our DAO, free, but they're absolutely fantastic works. And I think it's just an indication of the sort of community and the love between both collectors and artists that's really felt for us and me personally.
I think I'm just going to add, with the airdrops, though, it comes both as a present but also as a very naughty surprise. Like, I see things all the time in my wallet, like some COVID stats, like, you know, they're all experiments, and I'm sure all of us got them, and it's definitely fun. And actually, what you pointed out about like selecting the works, it brings me to the next question, which I think Josh and Holly, you can talk to. It's about the inclusivity and curation, because especially like most of the Tezos-based platforms are really open, but there are like certain experiments that are taking place on FX Hash and on Rarible. So I would love for you to sort of like share your opinion on those.
Yeah, if we go back to like my biggest mistake was like in collecting NFTs was with art blocks. I didn't realize I like made some good decisions, but then I was like short-sighted with just the significance of it. And once FX Hash like came about, I recognized it's art blocks, but it's open for everybody. And there's something really beautiful about that, because like I was alluding to before, in my opinion at least, the best curators are the artists themselves. So having this open forum for artists to release at their own will and pace has been a blessing. It's created like, FX Hash is not a year old. There's over 15,000 projects and over 900,000 artworks. That's like absolutely incredible. Like there isn't a precedent for something like this. And it's only able to exist because like the art, and a big backbone of that is quite natural. It's the artists themselves collecting. I imagine, I'm not an artist myself, but like when you're collecting something, it's helping inform you and your taste and how you want to, I don't know, how you see the world and such. And if we quickly go back to talking about Johns and derivatives, I guess derivatives of, in some way, in like, this is just my interpretation, but in traditional art have not always been looked upon favorably, but like music, when you remix something, it can often be like a better version of the song. So more recently, there's an artist I really like, conceptual artist Xerox. There's a piece, Royalty, which was like CCO'd. It had 0 royalties. It was sort of mocking the whole like the structure of the system. And like there's been, second I think to John, like the most derivatives I've seen of it. And there's like a wallet that literally just has those pieces, and it's like literally just rats running around a crown, and just like the symbolism and everybody kind of just working and building off of each other it's cool. Yeah.
I think you're so right, Alex. You know, my experience with Tezos has been that it has been the most inclusive community within the whole ecosystem, and that's like saying something, because the whole NFT space and Web3, I think, you know, in terms of the decentralized nature, I think that's what we're all here for. It's certainly what I'm here for. So I'm here to support the artists first and foremost. And so, yes, I am Rarible, but yes, I am like freaking out over what FX Hash are doing. It's so freaking cool. Similarly, like other smaller marketplaces like Async are doing really dope things as well. But I was going to just talk about like the generosity of the community and like the early days of like how we were all sharing information. And I was going to mention the Rob Ness example as well, because I think it took me about 10 or 15 goes to actually find that address. And I was like, okay, I think I got it. But yeah, so that still sits on my wallet somewhere. But I definitely see how like there's artists that I was like chatting with and talking to in those early days, like James Alex Hardy, who's here somewhere, who's gone on to like create really incredible like experimental pieces across different marketplaces. I've collected like his first Tezos mint on Rarible, I think. It was like an edition. And to me, that was like it was more about our connection and our relationship between artist and collector. It wasn't so much about kind of like the value or the gain. It was really like I wanted to have that moment with James in that piece of work. And yeah, I think the way that the relationships are evolving and developing, I think that's why I kind of have imposter syndrome, because like you guys are all like working so closely with artists now, which is kind of like, you know, crazy, because obviously I get to talk to lots of incredible people too. But yeah, very, I suppose, indebted really to like the creators for like, you know, their sharing, their openness. And normally you wouldn't necessarily have had that close connection in like the traditional world. You never would have had those direct conversations and relationships.
Yeah, and I think there's almost, or do you want to add to the point?
I definitely agree with that. A little bit of background, I started as a musician on SoundCloud in around 2014. So, and I could have never envisioned, you know, talking to my idols that I looked up to in music. But now, you know, within the first 2 months, I was able to, you know, DM Xcopy and DM Coldy and talk with Nicholas Sassoon and Pixelful and all these artists. Sometimes just reach out to you to talk about art and what their thoughts on everything are in the NFT ecosystem at the moment. But it was just really incredible at how open and welcoming everyone is inside of the community itself. It really was shocking, and it still is shocking to me that that we can just so easily as collectors reach out on Twitter and DM people that are putting their utmost passion and energy into art. I think that is one of the biggest points for NFTs for me is that kind of connection that you can have with people in that sense.
I was going to actually ask a little bit about one of the things that I've sort of noticed and seen happening more in the space and within the community is this kind of like influencer moment.
That was my next question. That was in our question today. So yeah, moving on to the next question. Thank you. So actually, no, we wanted to talk about the future. So earlier in our panel, like we had a little discussion, like what are some of the themes that are evolving? And sort of like we mentioned during the generative art panel, it's the live minting events, but we're also seeing collectors become artists and artists become collectors. So there's this like life cycle that is taking place at a very accelerated rate. And so just looking into the future, how do you see us bringing in sort of more new geographies, tapping into people who wouldn't necessarily be interested in this space? And then I think in the context of this question, and Holly, you could maybe also speak to that, is how influencers are affecting this, because many people who are maybe whales in the on Ethereum are slowly shifting towards Tezos ecosystem.
My sort of thought was like when I saw Cosmo de Medici, for instance, tweet about picking up work on Tezos, I was kind of like, yay, and I kind of like it being like this underground thing and like, you know, the thing that we've all been doing, but at the same time, awesome, there's an amazing collection to be in, and for the artists, it's incredible to be, you know, shown alongside ETH artists. This is the, you know, the thing that, one of the things that Nicole and I often talk about is like, one-of-ones on Tezos represent the best investment, like, period.
Yeah, he made a really big purchase at the time when he joined. Yeah.
So it's like, I guess one of the things on our panel is patronage, and patronage can like come in many forms. It can come like from spending a lot of money, like you see influencers and they spend a lot of money maybe, and or they might sell something for a lot of money, and that creates influence that gets the word out. And like, I mean, we often won't hear about art unless it sells for a really high price. So in a way, it's like a necessary part of the ecosystem, but like patronage can go beyond an influencer. Like it can, like for instance, in my mind, Cypher is a patron of generative art. Like he's enabled a platform that's allowed for like thousands of artists to create generative work, sell it. He's allowed for many of them to leave their jobs and to do this full time, and like that's like a beautiful thing, and like hopefully we recognize patronage in like a multitudes of ways, not just like, oh, someone spent a ton of money, and not just say that like it's not important to spend a ton of money. Like there's DAOs on Ethereum such as like Flamingo DAO and Fingerprints and like krpdm on Tezos. It's critical. We need these foundations. We need these like new institutions to kind of disrupt and to create like the system and the world we want to see. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's kind of as Hollywood was saying, like you see big collectors coming into the Tezos ecosystem, and it's double-edged sword. It's like, yay, and then it's also more competition, and how are we going to set up wallets, and how much do we have to gas? Jesus, the gas wars now. So there's these sort of considerations, but you know, the other end of that, it's artists that have been toiling away and crafting beautiful stuff on what is kind of been more of a niche chain, and I think it's important, and it's great that they're starting to recognise proper valuations of their work and their, you know, floors rising of their long form sets and just their actual lower edition works getting a bit more coverage and joining bigger collections in general. So yeah, double-edged sword, but I think it's been great in general, and with regards to, you know, how can we help proliferate this space more, I don't think there's anything like the space really needs to do. I think time will, you know, people will get attracted to this over time, and you have these sorts of events where you have free minting and artists and collectors sharing, conversing, and just, you know, having a public space where you have talks on like this with some really special artists and creators, so people can learn more about their process. I think that's really the least. It seems like the least effort to do, but it's honestly, it's just the best thing to do, I think. I don't think it needs to go wild with marketing or anything like that. I think time will solve this, and over time people will start to collect more and more over Tezos, and yeah.
And just, there's definitely a lot of effort that put into pulling this show together, so not trying to say, like, there are definitely builders in this space that are making these things happen, and so it's just a matter of whose role it is to make that change happen.
I think a great way of getting new people to see what the NFT culture and environment is like and communities are like, are truly sharing how the art makes you feel. That's a pretty much a prior point, or like a priority point of my Twitter. I really like to share how art makes me feel and what it means to me, more so than, oh, I sold something for however much, or I managed to catch this at a certain time before everyone. I think what really can get people very excited about art is how it affects one another. And I've certainly been reached out to in messages where a lot of the sentiment is, you know, it's refreshing to actually have thoughts and opinions, and to share your emotions that you feel while looking towards art. And that's just when I started getting messages like that, it really clicked for me that this may be a way to actually, you know, spur a new form of, you know, love and endearment and acceptance for all forms of art, especially like on the Tezos blockchain, where it is a very inclusive place where artists can release. And I also think another way to onboard more collectors, viewers, artists to the ecosystem in general is more social medias that are focused on making it extremely easy on how to make a Temple wallet or a Kukai wallet, or how to, you know, sync on these sites, because you know, I grew up in a very technological time period, and it came very easily to me. But I can see where those kind of outlets are incredibly important to make it intuitive to be able to join this sort of community, because the community is very wholesome, but you need to make that first step to get it. And if it's very confusing on how to do that, that could very easily create a block for a lot of people. And I've seen that create a block for a lot of people, because I've been here for the last year and a half observing pretty much every step of the aspects of what NFTs are on Tezos. So yes.
It's really interesting that we always talk about education a lot. Rarible just literally opened a really awesome office in Williamsburg in Brooklyn. And one of the things I really want to do with Tezos is use that as a hub, because I've kind kind of noticed the community is very different in the US, very different in New York, for instance. Like we have a Tezos community manager, Moyo, who's actually an artist herself, exhibits her photography pieces, and she's actually based in the UK. But yeah, I'm planning on doing a ton of stuff in New York as well. I think like creating that kind of content that can be actually a valuable tool for like the next round of people that we bring into the space, like through your eyes, through your experience as a collector, where you may not have, so many people haven't seen themselves as collectors before. I certainly didn't. So yeah, there's a lot to share.
So we're all coming to Williamsburg for our next get-together.
It's a big, big office. You're welcome.
Also, like building on the point of you talking about arts, like, oh my God, if you can date a generative arts collector, because the amount of compliments you're gonna get, like the way they describe the work is so good. I'm just like looking on my Twitter, like, is he talking about art? Like, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So I think we're running a bit out of time. I have one more question. Is there any audience questions just before we dive into our final one? No, okay, perfect. We have more. So one thing, like, I just wanted to maybe like keep the conversation on arts lovers rather than flippers. Maybe if there's like one work of art by an artist that you're sort of like in your collection that you would like to talk about. Like, I'm not saying it's your favorite because it's impossible to say your favorite. Let's talk about maybe one of your latest acquisitions that you're excited about.
Yes, there's definitely a piece. Now, I don't necessarily have the most liquidity out of all collectors in the ecosystem, but I did manage to collect an Iskra 1 of 1 that is a red uninhabitable on FX Hash. And being able to own a piece that gives you such a visceral reaction as soon as you see it, where it kind of makes you drop everything, and all thoughts kind of leave your brain because you're being mirrored. It's like almost like my feelings were just being mirrored by what I was seeing on the art piece itself. Being able to collect that sort of art that means that much to me, that I find that much emotional attachment to. It's like falling in love at first sight. Honestly, it's incredible. It's I've been following Iskra's releases since the very beginning of Hick Nunk, I would say, and being able to own a 1 of 1 that moves me like that is one of the most special feelings I've ever had, possibly.
I'm so happy Iskra is here in this with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so many, really tricky to choose from. So I wouldn't say, I'm not going to go to favourites or the best one we got. It's obviously very hard to be objective about that. But we recently picked up a work by a team called Mesh Labs, which, and I suppose I bring it up because it hugely resonated in the DAO. And we got a lot of active members. We got some that just aren't, they might not be able to participate in a big way, or they've been very busy, particularly with the markets as they've been. But I remember I can't remember who in the DAO dropped it, but it was a Symphony on Acid 1 of 1, and it's paired with Max Cooper on sound, and then this amazing algorithm by I forget the name. Well, I don't forget the name. I just can't pronounce it. I see it written. But anyway, this piece was just amazing, and everyone in our DAO was just like, yeah, tune, bang, amazing, love the visuals, and it just kind of had this really great blend of audio visual, which is kind of probably a bit more emerging in the Tezos ecosystem, the pairing of audio and visual. You see a lot of static works and stuff that are beautiful in their own right, but this was an audio visual experience, and it really genuinely was an experience. It just completely blew us away. 4 minutes of just mind-blowing music paired with this cool like typography flipping around the screen, and yeah, that's a really special one for us.
This is not a fair question. I have like 4,000 NFTs, and like to pick what my favorite kit is.
Not the favorite, one of the latest that excites you.
I'm gonna go like a little like aesthetically. There's so many pieces I love. There's a piece I picked up a while ago that is like resonating specifically here because I heard Mario, like this is my first time I haven't gotten to meet him yet. I will, but there's a piece he has. It's an edition of 50. It's called Bot Watching. And it's basically just this like captcha of a bot, and it's just like the bot. It's like just a GIF or a loop of it being checked, and it like did not sell at all. It like I think he like re-swapped it back, and it's something for me that's super cool, just knowing that Mario created Botto, just how much like, especially like I've experienced a lot of mints and releases, and competing with bots as a human, you are at a disadvantage, like technologically it's like impossible to compete, but I don't know, just conceptually, like all those things together, I think is in this point in time, or at least when collecting, it's very meaningful for me. Even if like nobody likes it, like it's still such a cool piece. Yeah.
I would say, yeah, this is a really, really tricky question because I need to look at my Temple wallet to really like decide. So I'm going to choose a piece that I haven't yet collected, but it's been on my mind for some time. And I feel like I'm going to be revealing some secrets because Nicole and I worked on an exhibition for Freeze in LA. It was like the first Tezos NFT exhibition, half minted on Rarible, half minted at Vertical Crypto Art. There's still some hidden pieces on Rarible that are available, including a piece from Henrik Alderlin. And I'm kind of like, yeah, I keep thinking I got to keep an eye on that piece, especially with the price of Tezos right now. So yes, this is yeah, I know.
Don't talk about the price.
There is there's a couple
Thank you for the alpha.
There is a couple of really, really incredible pieces. Yeah.
So we're all definitely going to check it out, and all the artists mentioned so far. Thank you to all of our speakers. We're exactly on time. Thank you for everyone for attending our talk.